I'm the CEO of Relex. We are the world's first real estate development, cryptocurrency, and blockchain funding solution that utilizes crowdfunding. Okay. We started in the summer of 2017, and we didn't do an ICO, and we indexed with the SEC earlier than later. When we first called the SEC saying, oh, we'd like to start this cryptocurrency, we'd like to figure out how we can get this done and everything like that, the sense was, why are you calling us? Okay, well maybe Bob can figure out what you need. And I got transferred on and on and on, and nobody knew what I was talking about. They're like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to index with the SEC. And they're like, we don't have people called to do this. Fast forward not even a year later, it's what is on the tip of everyone's tongue in the US when they are looking to get started. How much a year can change things. Okay? So, with further ado, what is Relex? Relex is the world's first cryptocurrency development crowdfunding platform. Okay? Why did we create this? I was involved in the private equity and investment advisory field for many years. I was sent over to country, generally in Southeast Asia, where it's find me a real estate development project. Find me this. Find me that, as far as what the fund manager's target was, and so on and so forth. For some years, I worked with Paul Gambles as far as with MBMG Group, and also with Douglas Clayton from Leverage Capital, among others. I noticed a funny, interesting thing in the sense that when I was doing this in the course of my job, for instance, in Cambodia, there was a project called The Bridge that I was working on in the mid-2010s. And it came to be about, this was looking to be a solid investment, the due diligence checked out, everything looked good. I went to my investors in the US and said, hey, there's this great project in Cambodia, and da-da-da-da. They go, yeah, but it's in Cambodia. And I quickly realized that there was a sense of discrimination, of not the quality of the project inherent, not the return on investment, but where the country of origin came from. That to me registered as a serious problem. What to do about it? We essentially found to use cryptocurrency and blockchain technology coupled with due diligence and oversight mechanisms like what we had in the private equity industry to make sure that we would make our fund managers happy, and brought this to the 21st century. We stopped using 14th century antiquated ledger technology that what we used to do in the medieval ages, and we brought it to the 21st century. However, investment advisory and the 3%, I have an investor, you have a project model, never changed in over 100 years. Originally started over a century ago. I have a project, you have an investor. We'll connect the two if there's a fee involved and if there's a reasonable sense that people are going to be paid on that end. So that's what brought about the creation of this. Provides a bridge between developing market economies or otherwise difficult to access development opportunities. Developers are held to a higher standard of accountability and agrees to their investments being transparent and viewable over the blockchain, which I just mentioned. What I was talking about before, these developers gain a higher level of investability. Now what do I mean by that? You have a project such as The Bridge. You have very suitable, very attractive investment opportunities in terms of Thu Thiem in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. One of the only empty land plots in the world so close to a central business district, and you can go over 300, 200 top commercial cities for a given country, and you won't find a parallel opportunity with the sense of Phnom Penh, but that used to be a lake, and then they sanded it over. So these kinds of opportunities are staring people in the face and saying, how great are these opportunities, the investments are good? Yeah, but it's in Vietnam. Yeah, but there's a legal framework challenge. Yes, but there's an investment framework challenge. Yes, so we set out to change that and to try to put a world together where you look at projects based on what's the underlying quality of the return on investment, bar none, which makes where the origin, the investment is from, much less relevant and much less of a concern. Okay? problems does Relex solve? I'm going to go through this really quick. As you guys all know, that the real estate is a huge market. Within China alone, we were looking at about $2 trillion as far as the real estate development market. About 75%, though, of global investable capital into commercial real estate projects only go into 10 countries. US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and I think you guys probably guessed the rest. Why? Because these countries have a reputation as being a transparent destination for investment. Okay? And we looked at that and said, 75% of all the commercial real estate investments in terms of development are made in only 10 countries. Well, what about the other 190? What about the 180? However you want to count it, right? So we found out that the traditional way of executing investments is opaque, in the sense that you as investor send over to developer's bank account. When did the developer withdraw the USD? You don't know. How much did they withdraw? You don't know. How much of that money did they actually put towards the project? You don't know that either. However, in the traditional way, the investor would basically look at the yield and the risk of the investment and say, yeah, it's not worth it. There's a too less developed legal financial framework, etc. With the ability for frontier and emerging market developers to show, however, exactly when they withdrew the funds, in what amount, and who they paid, they're able to leapfrog and get into a higher frame of investability and actually be considerable instead of ignored. All right? This has direct implementations for increased FDI into developing countries. Okay. So what have we done? We've connected the world of cryptocurrency with the world of real estate development. Not only did we create the cryptocurrency, not only did we get all of our legal and compliance things all taken care of, but we also linked up real estate developers in Vietnam, China, Vietnam, Canada, Myanmar, and also other countries as well. Okay? We have connected the world of cryptocurrency to the world of crowdfunding, and we have since done so through a long labyrinthian process of figuring out how to, number one, gain the approval, and number two, once we figured out how to gain the approval, realize that it's not worth gaining the approval of at this point. And what I mean by that is that current frameworks in developed countries, we actually found were less favorable to us as far as an adequate jurisdiction. How can we follow through with our business model? How can we raise $20 million, $30 million, $40 million for a developer within the current frameworks set by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, FINRA, and so on and so forth? That sent us on a very interesting regulatory and compliance journey that led us to where we are. Okay. Going on to the fourth point, we received official government approval from the Republic of Belarus to crowdfund all of our projects on our platform. That happened over a course of time, conversations, repeated meetings, so on and so forth, but it did result in us being able to be approved. Instead of raising just $1 million for crowdfunding purposes for real estate development, we were able to raise that limit to $50 million. Okay. Fully approved and sanctioned by the government of the Republic of Belarus. This is a world first, as far as we know, as other crowdfunding platforms are limited to about $1 million. Continuing on. So where do we do it from? Relex ecosystem. Probably never seen that flag before for a while, but you're going to be seeing it more and more often in the future. Belarus. The most suitable jurisdiction for large deal sizes has emerged. Believe you me, we've had conversations with other jurisdictions, including but not limited to names known as Blockchain Island, as well as others, and it still did not give us the regulatory jurisdiction that we were looking for. We found an interesting match, however, with BVI in terms of being a suitable jurisdiction for our in-house developed financial offerings, such as our nanocoin offerings. Nanocoining is a term in the metals industry in which that there is an etching upon a metal that doesn't change the underlying of that metal. And we've since been doing that in terms of offerings having to do with various experimentations in underlyings versus fundamentals. Okay. The US, we ultimately believe that the crowdfunding limit will be raised to $5 million, $10 million, because I think that's what both nascent and established developers and other stakeholders in the US economy want and need, but that hasn't gotten there yet. So for right now, the US serves as our global advocacy and awareness space for global crowdfunding reform. However, having said that, we have found a model that does work within the constraints of the US system, and we will be moving forward on that as well. As well as, according to policy set by the relevant laws, the setup of the company into the new jurisdiction is currently underway. 3 C's, what's missing in the real estate development industry: crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, and cryptocurrency. Crowdsourcing, the value that the cryptocurrency revolution has created more than anything is the cohesion and the tightness that businesses are able to create with their community like never before. We've had closer interaction with our community. You could even say that cryptocurrency communities are tied at the hip with their community. Okay? By tapping into that, you're able to have a better insight, better filtered, better designed project via crowdsourcing. Crowdfunding we already know about, and as far as cryptocurrency, we do plan a rollout of specific case smart contracts tailored for the project and DApp functionality. However, we chose to get the regulation right. We chose to get the approval right. We chose to make sure that our legals were all good and ready to go. And we wanted to make sure that we had an operating platform before we started working on it. Why? We decided to read the book rather than left to right, right to left. We like to look, kind of towards the end of the book, see the conclusion, and kind of walk back to what were the steps that led to that conclusion. So that's how we approached it. So we got to the end of the story first, approval, platform. Now let's walk it back and let's take the earlier chapters as far as the technology underpinning it, which only makes our solution better. Okay? How do we do it? The Relex proxy developer model, which gives users the opportunity to take part in the design process of the project, kind of like how I said. It also allows direct communication with developers on a proxy development platform. You can actually interact with developers that have signed on with us onto the proxy development platform, saying, hey, why don't you do this? Hey, why don't you do that? The Global Operations Managing Director, Peter Lee, who used to be the ex-VP at JP Morgan, he came to FLC Group, which is one of Vietnam's largest developers, run by Mr. Dinh Van Huyt, one of the Vietnam's only US dollar billionaires. And he said, why don't you bring something to Vietnam that's never been done before? I said, what are you talking about? He says, in the last 1,000 years, you guys haven't had a yacht port. Interesting. So that conversation, because we had the community, because we had the proxy developer model, starting to get our community setting forth on a path for us to develop a yacht port in Vietnam, which will be the country's first. And we decided to do this with FLC Group because we feel that they would have the strengths in terms of gaining the necessary approvals to open up a new customs court within Vietnam. Okay? So I'm going to move on to the next slide here. Very interesting as far as the model. I want to lay out. Everybody talks about transparency. Everybody talks about accountability, but people don't talk about enforcement. A little bit of time for me to get into my background. Last time that I was in Hong Kong at a particularly notable time was at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners Global Fraud Conference. Okay? And we were looking for solutions, how to prevent, detect, and of course, go after fraud. Now, fraud is damaging to all of us, not just from a direct dollar amount, but because of the chilling effect that it has on foreign direct investment. Too much fraud in the country restricts and does a chilling effect on the amount of investment that that country ultimately gets. So there is a deep need to create that trust and reduce fraud in order to amplify and enhance the overall foreign direct investment that a country is going to have, whether it be Vietnam, whether it be Cambodia, whether it be other countries as well. Relex Capital is our platform that we currently have right now. That is the accountability layer. The accountability layer as far as the project information, this is what it entails, this is what you're going to get, full disclosure, all sorts of things like that. Okay? What we've noticed is that there's less of the enforcement layer and advanced milestones checks. The rest of the industry has this down pat as far as better tracking of funds, and so on and so forth. But If you're only transparent, you simply gain the ability to know, I'm being robbed. I can see my theft, I can see the theft occurring in real time. Maybe I can go on Etherscan and I can do some Etherscan begging, right? Because the industry lacks, to a large degree, the enforcement. What happens when a theft occurs? Well, you can watch it on the blockchain until it arrives to someone somewhere. Who is it? We don't know yet. That's got to change, okay? So there's an enforcement layer and there's an achieved milestone check. In the private equity, investment advisory industry for real estate development, you generally would like, and it's a good practice to do so, to release the funds in tranches, okay? In terms of foundation, in terms of different stages of the development. I'm going to move on. I think you guys get the point. That's why we call this the trifecta of transparency, accountability, and enforcement. We believe that both, and rather all of these, are inevitably necessary for the entire industry to be successful in the long run. Okay? So the trifecta of transparency, accountability, and enforcement. Next. Why on earth did we seek crowdfunding approval in the Republic of Belarus? If you asked me about a year ago, I'd be just as bemused as you. Decree number 8 by President Alexander Lukashenko of the Republic of Belarus decided to make a bold move forward to embrace the full digital transformation and digital nationalization of the involved technologies into the entire country. Legislation was introduced to attract a blanket of technological reforms into the country, of which that it indirectly caused a game changer in global crowdfunding. Belarusian society has, for many years, had a culture of crowdfunding. If you need a park bench in a park, you can crowdfund it. If the community needs something else, they can crowdfund it. Who knew it was going to come to this, but it has. So our approval of our business operations from the Belarus government opens the opportunities of Decree number 8 in digital transformation, presenting a more flexible solution in the form of crowdfunding. Relex, through the Republic of Belarus, currently can raise up to $50 million for developers. Okay? If we had decided to only go for FINRA approval, or with the MAS, or with others, we would only be able to raise about $1 million to about $1.2 million. So there's not too much that we would be able to do with our given business model. All right? So it allows us to provide a more optimal solution. What's next for Relex? Deepening cooperation with governments. We are currently working not only with the Belarus government, but we've obviously been working with the Vietnamese government as well. Not limited to the road construction and construction of a university in northern Vietnam. We've also been utilizing our proxy development model by completing and funding, like I said, development projects such as the FLC Yacht Port or the university in Myanmar. Scalable. Our funding model and our proxy development model is both ready to go and scalable. It's a real product, it's a real service that's already there. It's not a concept. So we want to integrate our model with partner financial institutions. We've had interesting conversations with banks in Belarus, as well as other financial stakeholders. Ultimately, we believe that the integration of this technology will be more beneficial to the traditional financial system as a whole. We're also currently underway setting up in a new jurisdiction, so you guys can look out for that. Thank you.